Welcome to the Resilience Sucks podcast, brought to you by the Adaptability Movement. I'm Ben.
And I'm Dan.
And we're here to give you resources and tools to help you go from a state of surviving to thriving in life.
Resilience sucks the life out of you. And while it's a necessary skill, it's one that we don't want to spend too much time in or we run out of capacity. We're here to talk to you more about how to adapt and find the opportunity in change so you can really go about thriving in your own life.
Welcome to another episode of the Resilience Sucks podcast. I'm Dan Kirk, your host, and this is Rex Buckingham. Now, welcome to the podcast, Rex.
Good morning.
Now, Rex has a history in kind of along the same lines as us, like running wellbeing programs and helping influence culture and attitudes and behaviours and those types of things within organisations. So you're doing that through an organisation called Colour Thinking, as well as Leadership.
Leadershipthinking.academy.
Leadershipthinking.academy. I was mixing up the order of them. Absolute pleasure to have you on here today, Rex.
Thank you.
Just if you could just lead in by just telling us just a little bit about what those organisations are and what you're trying to achieve there.
Sure. Well, as is my style, I'll start by changing the first question, and I'll just insert into it. I heard about these guys from another outstanding guy, all in the wellness environment, all doing it differently. And there's just so much that needs to be done differently to make the impact on the people who need to be assisted to be the best they can be. So leading back into what I do, 40 odd years ago when my wife was about to give birth to our second child, I quit corporate life and I became a consultant. And so why did I do that? Because I saw so much happening in the community that was just ho-hum. In business, just ho-hum. Here we go again. Just the same stuff being done. Yeah. So now I'm 74 and I'm still working. I work about half time, and I work because I'm really concerned at the growing number of youth suicides. I'm very concerned about the growing incidence of domestic violence. And so coming back to my personal story, this takes about 5 minutes, so you just have to hang on there and just pay attention, because otherwise it sort of doesn't make much sense. So yes, my name's Rex, and my father sent me to a private school, paid all this money to end up with what I call myself as an amoeba. So I was the guy who was the most completely unsuccessful person at school. And even though I hated school, I thought the headmaster was amazing, but he actually sat over my whole life at school, allowing me to fail every year. So the only thing I got good at school was stuttering, so I couldn't get a second word out. And so, apart from my father losing a bit of faith in this son of his who didn't have much happening in sport and didn't have much at all happening in academia, so what the hell was his son about? And so at 15, I thought maybe this is not working, and somewhere I got the confidence to say to my headmaster, before my parents, this is not working. And he sort of agreed with me. Well, what a shame he didn't agree with me several years earlier. Anyway, that's another story. And so I quit school at the end of the year when I was still 14, and I turned 15 on the 10th of February, which was often the same day as school went back. So I look forward to my birthday with absolutely no fun at all, because I was going to go through a whole pile of crap for another year. Because the teacher I was going to get when I turned 15 would have been told by the teacher I had when I was 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, that Rex is a bit of a dud. So I kept living down to their expectations.
Sure.
And my expectation of me was down. Hence, it was so easy to pick up stuttering. So there I am, 15, applying for my first job. And my first job was at Woolworths. And I may have told you the story when I first met you last week, but there was 35 steps up to the mezzanine of the old Woolworths store. There was 34 boys wanting a single job. And here I am, I can't talk and I have no academic background, and this guy hires me. And that was a pivotal moment in my life. Someone had shown positive expectation. Now, I ended up being the youngest manager in the history of Woolworths, this dud. And I'll put it down to Tom Gifford, assistant manager of Woolworths, for having seen something. And I asked him about 6 months later, Tom, why did you hire me? And he said, of all the boys, Rex, there was nobody who needed it more than you did. We've got 350 staff here. We don't need one person that much, but you needed it that much. So that's why colour thinking and leadershipthinking.academy is so immersed in the concept of what does leadership mean. Yeah. Now you guys are bringing this adaptability concept, and there's all these different words we use for all these different things. It becomes confusing, and I'm 74 and you are what,
39?
39, wow.
20. I'm happy with that. Let's go with that.
But in that time, there's been so many changes in what people call things. So could we have marketers? And marketers say, well, we've been doing this for a while. We'll change all the words, and that'll be a whole new thing, and we'll sell that as a new product. And so we have this thing called resilience, which just about makes me vomit, and we have this thing called adaptability. So if I think back to my school days, I think I became dull and resilient, or I think I could have been one of these young people who commit suicide because there was nothing happening in my life. And so I'm really scared of the concept of anything about being resilient. That in my mind, that means it's there, put up with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's just wrong. So part of what I do, and you need to tell me if I need to stop talking at some stage so you can say something, but this is the part of the 5 minutes, okay? Part of what I do is anti-bullying, and I'm very good at it because I never ever talk to the bully. I talk to the person who is the so-called victim, who I say is a bully, because they are allowing, in this, wouldn't be you ever, but we'll point over here to this unknown person. We're allowing this person to impact on us in that bullying fashion. Well, if we change the way we operated with that person wouldn't have to be the bully. Yeah. And all that's missing is the strategy. Yeah. So colour thinking and leadershipthinking.academy.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I'm still practicing it. Is very much about strategy. Yeah. What's working, what's not working, what do we need to do about it? Yeah. So that's why the business is there, because it fulfills my personal needs to be able to help people be the best they can be, which is what you two guys are about.
And this is what's brought us together, I guess, because of that synergy and as you mentioned, a mutual friend through Danny Lloyd, and he's doing some wonderful things as well, where he's working with drug addicts and people that are incarcerated and those kinds of things to try and help them sort of create something and adapt to being a different version of themselves, to moving towards something rather than constantly trying to escape the life that they've sort of been trapped within. So. Like you said, it's something that we feel aligned in what we're doing, and it's nice to honour each other in that space and to be able to support each other, because I think there's a greater good to be achieved by networking, collaborating, and building an industry of that, rather than sort of trying to climb over the top of each other and undercut each other in a quote and that sort of stuff. So absolutely.
I mean, you talk about Danny Lloyd, and you talk about Nexa, and you talk about the adaptability movement. Danny's not on about druggies, and he's not on about prisoners, and you're not on about sports people. You're both on about people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Danny's got a lot of really excellent background where he has done an amazing amount of work, as it happens, with drug rehabilitation and prisoners. But his focus has been on helping them to adapt their life to a new life. Yeah. So one of the hassles with the prisoner is we have about 3/4 of them going back very quickly because they come back into the same pod and they do the same things. And I guess in sports, well, I know myself, I failed at sports very quickly, very easily, very young. And so I was always in that pod of the boys who didn't get invited to go and play sport. And so we stayed there festering together about what we can't do rather than what we can do. One of the things that my father gave me was the word can't should never be spoken. As soon as we say can't, we turn off all these kind of receptors in our head.
Agreed.
And I see it if I'm...
It's the worst thing you can hear as a coach. And because it tells you how how broken that person's perception, not them, but their perception of their self-worth in that environment.
Yeah, and it becomes self-fulfilling. So I've written a book, and it's called Developed Through Leadership Thinking. And in that book, I've laid out my story, and I've laid out a whole lot of different concepts that have helped me and have helped others, I'm told. But my father was against words like can't. He was against words like hope, and even no. Now, obviously, no is appropriate in some circumstances, but so often our habit is to say no first, which just closes someone down.
Yeah.
If I'm working with an executive group, say there's a exec group of 6, and you've got a fairly powerful leader, no, I'll cancel that word out, manager, I'll cancel that word out, CEO, who knows what they are, getting off on being the boss, and they are used to being listened to and having people agree. One person in that group says, I can't think of anything else. And you look at all the eyes, their heads go down, the receptors go off, and the boss thinks he's won the day. And he hasn't even heard from half the people. Yeah. So adaptability is such a big thing as against resilience, which is we just put up with it. That's the way it is.
Yeah, of course. And the podcast name Resilience Sucks, it's a play on words. It's not to say that resilience doesn't have a place or that it's not a useful tool. We absolutely think that should be part of your toolkit. But like you said, it's this finite resource, it's temporary. It's used as a defense mechanism when we're under stress. And so what we need to do is, yes, increase that capacity, because sometimes that stress is going to be an unknown sort of period. But at the same time, where's the opportunity? Where's the thing that you move towards, the thing that you create and innovate, being resourceful, being a great responder?
Yep.
Because those are the things that, and I know you said hope, right? And I think there's 2 different ways of using hope. I think there's hopeful because you're feeling hopeful about the future because you now have tools and you're doing something about it, as opposed to, geez, I hope things change. And so we talk about, we don't want to get stuck in this feeling of a fear-based mindset where you're just trying to avoid something all the time because you have no direction.
Yep.
You feel scattered, you feel isolated, you feel chaotic.
Yes.
Whereas when you feel hopeful and you choose hope or love to move towards, because, and I know this is, but let's explore this.
I'm listening.
There's different ways because different people have had, a multitude of experiences through life, and so they will hear these words in a different way. And so I think it's still useful, and that's why I use 2 words, because I don't think either of them summarises it well enough. I say we want to choose hope and love to move towards, not be just trying to move away from fear. But I'm open ears. Teach me something today.
Okay, so I'm 74 and I've just been reminded of something which I didn't need to forget. But I've got so much happening up here, sometimes I forget things. A lot of words by themselves are inadequate. Yeah, and so you need a second word to help the focus. So I don't mind you being hopeful, so long as it's tied to something.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, tied to something.
It's not your primary focal point. It is the consequence of doing something and having meaning, having purpose to what you're working towards.
Yep. I have the same problem with the word try.
Yeah, I think we can probably agree on that.
Well, there's an expectation in try of failure. So in my book, I say numerous times, people live up to or down to expectations. So if you don't expect to do it, you won't. So it'll be self-fulfilling. The trouble is, if your expectation of me is low, then my expectation of me is potentially low, and I'll probably end up giving a low performance. So that's how I see myself now. So it's really I was saved when I was 15 by someone expecting more of me. So I had no academia, nothing. Maybe I could spell occasional words, I don't know. And he said to me after about 3 months, "Now Rex, you're going to need to go and get some schooling." And he knew I'd been to the school for all my life. And so he said, "There's a school not far from you. This is leadership. This is him wanting to help me through it. And so Marion Road, you work out which school it is, pop along and have a look at them. You can go in work time if you like, and sign up." So I signed up for a year above the year I was about to start. So I lost an entire year, and I was third to top at the end of the following year. So I was working full time, and I was studying at night school, and this boy who was always the bottom of the class was suddenly third to top. same boy, just with a different feeling inside of me. I can do it. You know, it's a cancer, and unfortunately it's self-fulfilling, the word can't. Try is a bit scary because it's conditional, like it's almost like you may not expect to be able to do it. And hope can be used in the way that you first mentioned, and better off used in the way that you second mentioned. That I'm hopeful of doing this because I'm doing this and this and this.
Agreed.
You know, and in my last time out, I did 15 push-ups, and now I'm pushing 20 push-ups. Or last time out, I wasn't confident to go up and talk to somebody, and now I'm confident to go up and talk to somebody. You know, some measurement of progress.
And look, we've spoken about this extensively, and some in our previous podcasts about the power of language and grammar, and how you mentioned before, it's self-fulfilling. So we are the architect of our destiny, and in doing it, again, you came back to your anti-bullying stuff, and you talked to the person who identifies as the victim, and that's not to demean or diminish their experience, it's to say that there is power and opportunity in the way they talk to themselves and the way they take back responsibility for what they can impact that situation with, rather than hoping that someone else will change and that will then improve their experience. And I'm careful not to encroach on that area, because that is not an area that we specialise in like you do. But that language and how we talk to ourselves and what we express to others, and how that then creates almost energy about how we're viewed. And so then you're multiplying the effect by telling someone that I'm not great at that, or you attach yourself to I'm not great at sport, right? And that creates an identity around you, which gets multiplied by the people around you. So one of the first things we need to do, other than being self-aware, because we have to be self-aware to notice these things, is to then, how are we talking to ourselves? And how are we talking to others about ourselves? Because that is a powerful way of creating the type of life that we want to live.
This is a podcast, so you can actually go back. You can push it back and listen to that again, because that was really good stuff just then. You know, my stuff, who knows? That stuff there was really, really good. In my book, I don't know if I mentioned my book earlier. In my book, I say, so much of life is about words and sentences. And so, if you're currently getting a response from somebody that isn't the response you want, rather than blaming them for their response, look at the words that you're using when you interact with them. And so I say to people sometimes, in fact, I had coffee yesterday with somebody, and he's a psychologist, and I have forgiven him for that, and we had a really good conversation. And he has a problem right now with somebody in his life, and I said to him, so just tell me, if you met for coffee, just give me what would happen. Tell me the words that would happen. He said, well, I'll come along and I'll say this. And then, so what will she say? Well, she'll say this. And so where is this going at this stage? It's starting to fall off the rails already. And so do you recognise that you always start with the same sentence? Well, I hadn't sort of thought about it, but yes, I do. Well, why don't you change the sentence? Right. And I can guarantee you change that sentence and you've got an 80% chance of actually having a better conversation.
So much of what we do is operating from patterns, isn't it? And so when we go into a known relationship, and you see this a lot of times in like a strained marriage, for example, or a strained partnership of any sort, in that there's triggers for each other, and it becomes this repeating cycle because there isn't the self-awareness or the self-responsibility to look at what you can do to impact that situation. And so it's like, well, no, they're the problem because they always do this to me. But if you're an observer, if you're sitting back on that and you're observing that conversation, and you'd notice it over time, the same language is used, which becomes the same trigger, which elicits a similar response because there's an expectation that's where we're going to end up. So then, again, the power comes back to us. And this is not so much as a responsibility, it's a blessing. Because when we realise that, there's an opportunity to impact it, there's an opportunity to change it. Now, I can't change the way that you see the world or you interact with it. I can influence that by the way that I interact with you. So if I want to get a better...
I'm going to stop here.
Yeah, go for it.
I can't change. You can change. I don't know why you use the word
okay.
can't.
No, that's
you
fair.
can change.
Yeah, call me out.
What you just said then is a package of words that's out there, like you pick it off a shelf, because we often say things like I can't. But I can help you to find new ways forward.
I guess what I'm saying is this, I shouldn't see it as my responsibility to change you. It's not useful for me to try and change you. I can influence and I can assist and I can facilitate and I can guide all of those things.
Yep.
But I need to be personally responsible here first to then bring my best to that relationship.
Yep. And that goes back to the vision of your business, about what you're on about. It's a sort of tricky area because you are coming to me and you are taking responsibility to impact on me. And so you can't, when I was in corporate life, a manager said to me, Rex, you can't want it more than they want it. And I said, I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I didn't want anything when I was 15.
Yeah.
I had no self-awareness, so don't tell me about self-awareness. I was self-aware, I was the dud.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're going to come and talk to me, you're going to come and interact with me, you need to lift me up by your questions.
Yeah.
And you need to lift me up in the way you listen to me.
You become the catalyst,
A
right, for your
catalyst.
change.
That was the good one, the catalyst. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you do have a responsibility because you are delivering a product to
Agreed.
me, okay? And so when you see me not responding, your skills have to help through your questions, because questions are so powerful. Questions and shutting up. Questions and then shutting up. Shutting up after the question, so the person has a chance to answer. Boy, how many times does a person half answer and the person asking the question jumps in over the top with the assumption? Just how often? I'd say the majority of times. You know, as a teeny-weeny example, hey, I've just come back from Hawaii. What answer could I expect you to say to that?
How was it?
Well, you could, or you could say, I was in Hawaii last year. Most people want, and they just jump in and take over the conversation. We all, and I'm not showing any signs of that today by owning most of the conversation, because I was asked to come and talk to you, okay? But seriously, you know, if we could, and you've got a young daughter.
2 young daughters.
2 young, very, very brave man. He does use colouring in the hair, apparently. And seriously, I mean, as dads, as granddads, I'm better with my kids, certainly my actual children, when I shut up, you know, and I ask questions and I show an interest. And so if you're wanting me to become aware, it can only happen by you triggering, being the catalyst, triggering me to tell you, to disclose to you. And once I've said the words, that's my own leverage, not your leverage on me, but my leverage.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and that's not a bit, it's a whole lot different in concept in making it easier for me to adapt Rex, not become resilient to the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Like you come back to the parent stuff, like I smile because like it's exciting for me to watch and to just like be somewhat of an observer but a facilitator for our children to explore life and to discover things and to, you know, give them a really long leash and be there when they absolutely need you. But until that point, let them self-regulate and create and be self-aware. Like this is why so much of what we do, I get like sort of excited about this part of it because, you know, it's not about going in and telling people about the theory of, you know, adaptability or the theory of resilience or the theory of anti-bullying. It's about providing an environment where they can explore that for themselves. It's about providing something experiential and engaging and interactive, and because you came back to this before, you were talking about there's different states that we're generally in, and I would say that, you know, very rudimentary, but like there's transmitting, there's receiving, and there's observing. And so we talked, talking about the conversation, and I did do a little bit of research on you. I went back and had a look at your ask, listen, ask, listen, ask, listen. And for me, there is almost a third state in that observing as well, because it's like we can be the transmitter and we can transmit and we can create. We can be the receiver where we learn and we grow and we listen, and then we can also just be the observer as well. And the observer is a useful. They're all useful, but observing is really important as well, to not underestimate it, because it gives you that sort of perspective. It gives you that little bit more sort of considered approach to then what next, where to shift to.
So talking about living up to and down to, I've got a story which I think helps to understand that. I was working with not a young woman, a mother of a couple of children, and one child that wasn't working it out, and he was on suicide watch, and he had been suspended from school, and the mother got a call when she was working with me in a class situation, saying that the headmaster needed to see her. and because he would be suspended this time. And so she knew that was going to be a difficult conversation at home, because the father had already pretty much signed off from the son. It was a very standoff situation, and the son wasn't talking to mum. And so she said to me, can you just talk through some of those tools you're speaking about? So I got a bit of a chance to do it. And I spoke about this ask, listen, ask, listen, ask. And the thing about, I'm a dad, granddad, and if I'm not careful, I just talk too much. Yeah, and I tell people things they don't even need to know, or things they could have told me and made them feel better. But Dad Rex has got to be over everything. And so I said to her, can you imagine what it will be like when he comes home from school today? And she says, I know, because it's the same every time. He's going to come in, he's going to let his bike fall against the garage, which he knows is going to set us all off. So the first thing he'll see is us already angry, disappointed, all those negative things. He'll come in, I will ask him the same question I always do, and he walks straight past me and goes to his bedroom. So I said, okay, there's a fellow called Edward de Bono, and Edward talks about this concept of, what's the concept he talks about? with the benefit of prior knowledge. That wasn't quite right, but I'll get there. And benefit of hindsight was where I was going. And so let's work out what you could do differently so you could actually get to a different outcome, as you know the outcome you're going to get if you do the thing you've been doing day in, day out.
Sure.
So what could you do? And we had, as much as I could, I just kept the air empty, and she found new ways to do it. And I wasn't so much saying yes or no, but how would that work? What mightn't work with that? And she came up with the idea, I'll walk to the back, I know when he's going to come in, I'll take his bike, I'll already have a sandwich ready, his favourite sandwich ready, and I'll walk up with him, and I'll say, how about sharing a sandwich with me? Totally new first 4 minutes. And so she did this, he came in, she did it, he did it, they sat down at the counter and they spoke for a little while, and then they went into the lounge and sat at the lounge. First conversation for months they'd had in this equal value sort of way. The door slams and Dad comes in. The Dad is angry because she's rung saying what's happened with the school, and he's come in to go down to the school, and he's angry. And the son becomes rigid almost because he knows what's going to happen. Dad comes around the corner and finds his son and his wife sitting on the lounge talking, which is the first time that really in recent history. And it's amazing when something changes that physically, people pick it up, because it's not the pattern. It's nothing like I expected it to be. This is my son and my wife talking. And so they went down to meet the headmaster, and when they got into the headmaster's office, the headmaster started talking, and the father said, can you just give me a second? I need to apologise. It's the way we've been doing it with our son. You know, he's our son, and we can do it a lot better. Can we hold it off the suspension and give it a go? Now, is it a never-ending great outcome of that? Well, he's off suicide watch. This has happened maybe 3-4 years ago. I still get a phone call every 6-8 weeks. Beautiful. Just to say hi, Rex, you know, just that simple little shut up and ask a question and show an interest in the answer, and don't debrief the answer as being wrong. You know, don't shoot him down every time he opens up his mouth, because there's very often not actually only one way to do something.
Correct. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So the ALALA, ask, listen, ask, listen, ask. The secret of that is there's no tell in there anywhere. It's just purely asking. So there's no judgment. There's no, I am the dad, I am the boss. It's, I value you, you know. And it is tricky because you have to learn how to ask questions, and you have to learn the fact that you don't always have the right answer. So I would recommend, of all the things I've done in my working life, the biggest, most amazing feedback I've got is when people pick it up.
Yeah, for sure. It's you mentioned something there about feeling valued, and like it's something we talk about in the business, Ben and I, about, you know, essentially people just want to feel valued, welcome, noticed, And it makes such a herd, like it just makes such a big difference. Sometimes there's a gender bias to that. Sometimes it's a more of a noticed for the males, and sometimes more of a herd for the females. And I think that's kind of, the way society has kind of almost impressed different social expectations on each gender. But ultimately, we just want to feel like we have worth to others. And oftentimes that journey starts with ourselves. We need to find that self-worth within ourselves first, because if you can't value yourself, how's someone else meant to value? But it's just so, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and about how something so simple can develop such a strong connection with someone in the way that, they keep coming back. They keep coming back for that connection.
Well, I think I might have mentioned earlier today when we're talking, I don't know what it is about us and our need to be socially acceptable and our fear of being outside of what the herd is thinking. And so in most cases, when someone sits down, say the mother went down and had coffee with her girlfriends, I could just about guarantee they'd all tell her, what else could you expect from a boy that age? I've just been working with a young nurse who had a horrific time in a job that she had, and all of the other nurses who were getting equally horrific times all said, basically, that's how she is.
Yeah.
You just have to be resilient.
Yeah.
And she was, honestly, she had to pull over the car often because her tears would make it impossible to see, and it wouldn't be unusual for her to actually vomit in the car park. Such horror of going to work. And I mentioned earlier about the word anti-bullying came up. I did a little work with this young woman, very capable young woman, a very well accredited nurse, about how to treat this person who was doing this to her differently. Because when she was hired, she was told by the person hiring her, which is her boss's boss, I'm sorry, but she's a bully, you'll just have to work it out. That was 2 years previous.
Right.
This is not unusual.
Standing leadership.
Dan, it's not unusual. It's just not unusual.
Yeah.
And so she found the person was that kind of behaviour, and she thought, well, with my skills, I'll be able to work this.
Sure.
But the constant batting away every day just knocked her over.
It robs people. It robs you of vitality. Like when someone projects that message that says, well, just get on with it, get through, like harden up, toughen up, whatever it is. You go from this sense of, you've put yourself out there, you've made yourself vulnerable, you're saying, look, there's a situation I'm not comfortable with, I'd like to change it. And they've gone, don't worry, just keep going. Yeah. And you're like, what now? Like, you've not demonstrated any leadership in there, you've not demonstrated any compassion, you've just pacified the situation in the hope that it'll go away.
And why is that?
Because it's uncomfortable for them. Yeah.
And, they don't know.
No.
They also believe, in the case of this woman's boss's boss, she believed this woman was a bully. Yeah. But she was very good at her job. Yeah. And when she was on shift, the boss's boss knew it would all run. Yeah. But there was a movement of staff. Yeah. And this is the thing. Like we talk about like a net energy or a net, so whether it be habits, whether it be energy. But when you have a new person come into a relationship, they're going to have some things that are helpful and some things that are unhelpful. And what's that net gain? Or if it's not a net gain, it's a net loss, or it's neutral. You can't afford to have people that are constantly being a net loss. And that's not to be inhuman about it. It's that to build a connected team and to have something that is functional in a workplace or a sporting team or a school or whatever it is, you need neutral to net plus. And we don't often give that enough credibility, because often we go, well, like you said, they do a great job over here. And so that, I don't want to have to try and replace that. So you guys just deal with the other stuff, because I'm not necessarily wearing that, you're wearing that. That's right. But it's interesting though, the first part of that conversation there was, you can't afford to have those people. Well, in my experience, they are not those people. Yeah. They're just people acting a certain way. No, that's fair. Honestly, I have seen, well, in the case of the nurse, those type of behaviours is probably a better way of putting it. Those current behaviours. Yes. See, it all sounds like, that's fair. There's a bit of cement, that's the person. Good. Yeah. I like workshopping this. So with the with a nurse.
Yeah.
I said to her, because the nurse was actually a client's wife's sister.
Yeah.
And the client's wife was getting sick of her sister coming around and just bitching about the situation. And so she rang me and she said, my sister said I should see you. And I said, I've heard a bit about your situation. If you're going to come and see me, we're not talking about the person.
Yeah.
We're talking about you and your brand.
Yeah, terrific.
Okay? So she came around and saw me. She sat down and she took out a notepad. Now that was a really good start. Like she'd come not just to chat and stuff, but she'd come to do something. And I spent 2 hours with her, and she made all these notes. And I said, "Okay, you now need to go home, and I want you to type up the notes and send them back to me, and I'll see where I've been a little bit confusing, where I haven't finished a sentence, or whether it just hasn't worked."
Yeah.
And so almost before you could believe she'd have time to get home and type it up with the ding in the computer. And I read it through and I just sent a note back saying, absolutely. So the next day she did the strategy, which she had practiced 3 or 4 times with me. We changed some of my words to be more the words she might use. And that was maybe 4 years ago now, I guess. So I hear from her because she's my client's wife's sister. That next day, her life changed.
Right.
Black went to white.
Okay.
The next day.
Yeah.
Now, the other 4 people in her pod didn't change at all their behaviour, and her behaviour with them didn't change at all.
Yeah.
So she got a bit of bullying now from those around her.
Right.
Because, what are you doing? What are you sucking up with here?
Yeah.
And she'd say, well, you can see what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything different. But it changed. So my next conversation with her of note was when she rang me and she said, "Rex, I need a hand." And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "She wants to be my best friend. She wants to go to Melbourne on a shopping trip, and I don't want to be her best friend."
Right.
So we had a little chat about a strategy that would help her maintain the relationship she had built without getting caught into a thing that could have destroyed the relationship.
Yeah.
That was a strategy.
Well done.
That might lead you on somewhere.
Yeah, maybe I was a bit brash in my initial response, but I understand where you're coming from. I can see the in value in all of that. And like I often say in a situation that you're right, it's not the person, it's the way that person is currently behaving, and that's what is impacting the situation. Because it's not helpful to call, especially name calling. Like it's never been more prevalent in society. And it's not. I'm not talking about just demeaning someone based on you say they're an idiot or they're whatever. I'm talking about like really strong language about often politically motivated to say that you're extreme this or you're an extreme that, or that language can look different, but it doesn't help anyone. Because what you do is instead of dealing with the individual situation at hand, you're now saying, well, you're just like all of those other people that I've put into that category, and I've already made my decision about them, so this is going nowhere. And all that does is build more animosity and more separation.
I've judged you, and people live up to or down to.
There it is.
It just sits there all the time. People live. If I think you're an idiot, you will act with me like an idiot. And even when you're not being an idiot, I will treat you like an idiot. I mean, you have 2 girls.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a whole pot of people. What I say to them is really important, or what I don't say to them. But certainly how I say it to them, because they take it on and that affects their little brand. That affects how they see themselves. That's a huge responsibility.
Sure is.
And so much in my head has been hanging around there for a long time. And I've been a bit lucky because I got involved with emotional intelligence fairly early, and I sort of found out some of my toxic ways, which I sometimes would pretend was a joke, and more often than not it was sarcasm, and sarcasm is not a good thing, and I'm still working on that. Not always successful, but I know I've got to do it, and I'm working on it. And it's just every moment of the day, what we're doing is important. Every moment, and those who look robust often aren't. Yeah. So the blonde jokes and the Irish jokes and all that stuff, which is my generation, hurt people. Okay. Blonde girls started to think of themselves as being dumb. And we all hung around and laughed. And they would usually laugh because laughing was better than turning your toe and walking away, because that only brought more condescension. Yeah. The capacity to be an adapter, or to be adaptability, in my mind, how do I adapt? Not how do I put up with it
Yeah, sure.
is just such an important part of what I do. And I've written this book. I've got the book this time. And these guys have these amazing programs, and that's about, I'm going to say these words, I'll be corrected or not. This is about helping people be the best they can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in my experience, we don't always know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I've got to get you to a point where you're looking at yourself, and you're putting aside all of the prejudgments that have been around you all of your life to date, and you're saying, no, I can be this.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it is about having the capacity to emotionally ground yourself, so that you're not operating from this emotional peak of being really reactive to something, but able to go, oh, here I am, like I'm feeling that a little bit. I'm just gonna calm that down a little bit, and then be able to proceed with more perspective. Because when we're in that high emotional state, it's generally narrow focus. It's like, and if there's patterns that we've experienced before, then we make a very quick assessment that says, this is the danger that I've identified before in this situation, so this is how I need to respond. And so that could be flight, fight, fight or freeze usually.
Yes.
But that'll look different for everyone. Like, fight doesn't always mean go in and sort of throw punches. What it might mean is just like, head down, bum up, and you just charge straight ahead, and you're just working as hard as you can to get somewhere. So, having that perspective to know, oh, here I am again, bring that back down. And that's okay. Like, that's not something to feel shameful about or guilty for, but just that, okay, I feel somewhat, whether triggered's a strong word, but in some situations you will use that. It helps so much with connection, because it's very hard to connect up here. This is responding to a threat. Whereas when we're back down here, we're open again emotionally. We can be vulnerable. To me, that is strength. That's not what we've always been taught. We've been taught that it's that, very alpha male type stoic, like can't ruffle my feathers, water's off a duck's back kind of thing. And yet that is often the prerequisite for emotional trauma.
Have you heard there's even girls playing Aussie rules now? Have you heard that? I'm not quite sure if it's a rumour, but girls playing football, I mean, we've come so far, that we actually, and it hasn't been easy, has it, for them to get in there? It's taken some time.
Do you know, like, women's football's existed for a lot longer than what most people realise. Jenny Williams, proud South Australian, part of the famous Foss Williams offspring. She was playing back in the 80s, I think it was, if I remember correctly, and it existed well before that. All it is now is it's finally come to see the light of day in terms of TV coverage and sponsorship and that type of thing. So,
and it's amazing. It's amazing and it's fabulous. And I think we have to be careful not to be condescending about it. These are people playing a game, and we're used to seeing guys doing it. And it seems to me the public has picked up on it a fair bit now, because the publicity got with it. It became more sort of sexy to say, look at the girls for the sport, rather than look at the girls in the cheer squad. But brand is such an important thing, and we can be so negative to our own brand. And when I'm talking to women, and I have a few women who I coach about their brand, their biggest challenge is daring to see themselves as a person, not as a woman, not as a man, not as a woman as back in my days again. I think the first of all they put in shoulder pads and they wore suits, you know. And that was just one way of trying to tackle this. But how do you feel about yourself? What's your positive self-talk? What's your negative self-talk? When you're coming into a meeting, are you walking into the meeting already thinking people will treat you as a woman, or are you walking into a meeting being you? Yeah,
and I think I identify probably more with that than necessarily just being a person, because a person is almost intangible in some ways. Like, why not identify as how you want to be perceived as a woman or a man? So why not? Okay, I'm a strong woman, or I'm a compassionate gentlewoman, or I'm both, just in different situations. And the same thing for a man. Why does it always have to be kind of that tough exterior? Why can't it be that compassionate, vulnerable, loving partner? The adoring father. But then also, ruthless on the footy field, or strategic and very pragmatic in the workplace. And it's not about being a chameleon. It's about using different parts of that part of you to full effect in each situation.
Yeah.
And
Feeling safe enough
yes,
to be like that.
Yeah.
Because there's a ton of young men down at the gym I go to
yeah,
who just want to get beefier
yeah,
because that's going to suit what they think they need to
Yeah.
be. And
Yeah.
I write about that in the book. That in fact, are you happy with yourself? What part of you are you unhappy with? If you're unhappy with it, why are you unhappy with it? If you're unhappy with it, what is the role model that you're recognizing yourself against? And do you want to be that person in all the other adjuncts of their personality, or you just want to have muscles?
Yeah.
Because that person might have muscles, but might be at the moment, might be the person who's least empathetic with anybody else, who's the least polite. You know?
Yeah.
So it's a package deal, and we spoke about it earlier in our chat. Just getting a sense of my identity, and I'm as I mentioned, I'm 74, and I think I got a hold on it. Last week.
yeah.
Late last week.
It's still, in some ways, it's still fluid, isn't it? And this is why you talk about brand and why that's so important, because there's different ways of describing that in terms of, like I would say that I'm values-based in terms of the way I operate and the way that I involve myself in life, and that's been strong for me. But the values are what helps create your brand, because that's what you stand for. It's what you make decisions in line with. It's what gives you a hell yes or a hell no to a question which otherwise might have sounded like the right thing to do because of what expectation of those people around you.
Yeah, what's popular.
Yeah.
When I'm working with companies, I get invited into companies usually from a strategic point of view.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I do is do a very simple little analysis. What's working, what's not working. And I ask different layers in the company that question. And then what have you done about it either way? And that's a very interesting end result normally, because it's amazing how often management say, "Oh, I didn't know that." Well, these people have been walking around saying this, for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And so we have that. We're not the need to be socially acceptable. So if I'm on the line with you, I cannot help the boss fix a thing, because that's not what we do on the line. Right? And if I'm the supervisor, same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks the owner or the MD knows everything, and they don't. And successful companies are successful because the people in the business.
Yeah.
And that's normally where the boss has a degree of emotional intelligence and understands that they have to be the facilitator, not the solution. And that all this power. So I've got this thing, it's in the book here, the little book I've got here, and it's 1 plus a number should equal greater than the sum of the number. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, vaguely. There's a different...
Vaguely? This is a major
You know what? You go down and you just tell it in your words, because there's different versions of that, but sure.
No, there is. So your partner here is Ben.
Yep.
And you are Daniel, and I'm Rex.
Yep.
Okay, so if I'm doing all this talking, I do know a bit more about what I'm thinking because I've said it and I've heard it again. So I get that sort of second thinking of it.
Sure.
If I let you speak, now I'm going to get, as we have numerous times here, you've said something, when we spoke about hope, you came up with some really good thinking there. And that re-energized my thinking about the word. So now 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now, I came back on that and added a bit more to it. And then I think we came up with the answer, it's about one word being by itself is not enough.
Yeah.
And we got to there because we both listened to each other, and we ended up with something that wasn't alive.
Yeah. So it's that whole thing of the sum of the whole is greater than its parts.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's how I've heard it described before.
That's more of a mathematical thing. But it is. And the great thing about it is it's a great place to use ALA because I'm asking you questions and I'm listening. There are so many people who don't look forward to going to work. I mean, we have jobs out there waiting to be filled. We have numerous unemployed people, and we have jobs waiting to be filled. And we're handing them apparently not enough money to stay home, refusing to go and do the work. And often it's not because I don't think it's ever because they're bad people, but they are damaged people, perhaps is the way of saying it. And they've been in damaged employment environments before. They may be in a damaged school environment like I was.
Yeah.
And that really impacts. Who wants to go out and be shot down again? And so this leadership thing is just such a powerful concept. And this adaptability thing is such a powerful concept to help people say, okay, I'm sick of where I am, I'm sick of how I think, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
Now, I can help them in a lot of the sort of more psychological side of it, not that you can't, but you can help them in, I think you can help them in that, would I say, largely more physical way?
No, not necessarily. I think it's definitely a mindset. So it's that mental, physical, emotional. Sure, we've had the physical background in sports science and human movement, but there's also the mentoring, the acceptance and commitment training, and all those types of things that feed into it. So it's but when we try and do it, we try and do it experientially. So we put them in kind of a practical workshop-based scenario where you get a chance. We facilitate an environment. Okay, so by doing that, someone is able to then have an experience, reflect on it, and we can use that reflection to then pivot and adapt and find the next sort of way forward, right? The reason I say that is because too often I've been a participant in a situation where the PowerPoint slides are up on the wall, or you've got to read chapters 1, 2, and 3 before you arrive, and it's not stimulating. Like it's a very bland type of learning style, and I certainly didn't respond to it. Like that idea, I was always trying to outsmart the learning process in uni. But what I've learned since is like I am infinitely powerful as a learner when I know what I like, an area that I need to learn. I'll podcast it, I'll YouTube it, I'll jump on PubMed, I'll whatever it takes to get lots of different perspectives.
A bigger view,
exactly. So that then I can sort of gravitate towards where I think is the right fit for me and what I can share with others.
So when you talk about the experiential, what sort of thing would I be expecting that I might do?
Yeah, so like for example, we might run a small-sided game. So we could set up a little sports field and we could do, let's say it's Frisbee or something like that, where you got 5 aside. And what we do is we call it constraints-based learning. And that means that we start off fairly normal, some simple rules, like let people sort of be familiar with what they're doing. And then we start to throw in a bit of chaos. And we're like, okay, that's great. Now you got to use your opposite arm. Okay, now you have to pass it through this one person all the time. Okay, now you can't have a goalkeeper. Now you can have a goalkeeper, but only with one arm in the field of play. So you introducing that chaos to give people an opportunity to see what their response is that we can reflect on later. So like I said, it could be fight or freeze generally, and that'll be expressed in different ways. But if we just had a conversation about the theory about that, people might not have the self-awareness to be able to notice what that is. If we put it into a learning environment like that, where it's fun, it's interactive, there's a challenge associated with it, there's interaction, communication, teamwork, then we can use that as the base for that learning with first-hand experience. That's one physical way. We might do some, we do another one which is like a barefoot meditation, holding a mouthful of water. There's a lot that happens throughout that, but it's about bringing down the nervous system. I talked about emotionally grounding before. Developing that observing and noticing mind, and making it really simple for people, really easy to do, as opposed to, okay, cross-legged on the floor, straight back, breathing through your nose, eyes closed, and be completely still and don't think of anything. It can be anything to anyone, but let's make it really easy for people to sort of to start with this.
I guess what you're saying there is you're not the stock standard, how it's been done forever type guys. Because we all do learn in different ways, don't we? I mean, I know people who love doing the yoga thing.
I love it.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, see, I don't, because look at me. How do I do yoga? Yeah, I can hardly get off the floor when I'm down there with the kids. So it wouldn't be helpful to me unless I made a mind decision to do a lot of other work on me so I could do it. So in a group of, how many people would you have in a group sometimes?
Oh, I mean, it's anything from 8 to 180. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it just depends.
Quite big events.
Yeah, well, you can do for sure.
Yeah.
It's the thing with this is they're all tools, and so like you said before, when we go into an organisation, if we know that we're going to be working with them over the course of a year or two, then we'll do an adaptability audit, and we'll have a look through the organisation and identify areas, high impact areas for improvement, things that are otherwise a threat to the business in terms of underlying culture, people that might, or behaviours that are undermining the theme or the values of the organisation. all of those types of things. So then we can bring back a customised plan
Yes.
to offer some kind of solution to that.
Yep.
But we talk about ourselves as facilitators or guides because our job is to extract what is within that community. So we can't come in with a template for that. We can come in with a framework to say that this is generally sort of the underpinning things that we're going to utilise in that toolkit.
Yes.
These are the types of strategies and systems we're going to use to get the most out of that. But we need to learn about you as part of this. That's fundamental. Otherwise, we're just a couple of guys who think we know more than everyone else trying to tell you what to do. Nobody responds to that well, do they?
No, because they're spending most of the time saying you to a couple of guys who think you know all about it.
Exactly.
No, it's a challenge and keeping fresh. So one of the things I've learned since I met you two guys is that you're actively looking to talk to other people in the wellness space, so you can get different perspectives of it. And so I guess what I do is I sort of go back and audit some of my thinking. And so I said that the other day, and I'm not quite sure that's what I actually meant to say, or that sort of worked, 15 years ago. But today people are going to take that in a different way. So I'm not going to reach my objective in that situation. I reckon we could probably talk for another 2 or 3 hours, but
absolutely.
But I don't know how you're going back there.
Look, just to re-emphasise one thing, we talked about we do an audit, an adaptability audit. You do like a leadership audit. Would that be fair?
Yes.
So what people that are listening right now can do is they can actually head to our website, theadaptabilitymovement.world, and you can do your own personal adaptability assessment. So it's kind of like your own audit. Only takes 3 to 5 minutes. It's a set of about 20 questions, and that can give you a bit more insight into the 4 key areas of your life and where that adaptability and balance sits at the moment, and therefore some opportunities for improvement as well.
Sure. So once I've done that, what do I do then?
So at the completion of that, you will get a set of results. So it'll map you in terms of your education and career, your health and well-being, your mindset, and I missed one, haven't I? I'm talking off camera right now, relationships. So, and I'm not just talking about intimate relationships, I'm talking about interactions with other people. We've sort of come up with this system where we think that is a reasonable kind of way of categorising different areas to then get a bit of perspective on how we're operating in each. Because some of us do really well in a couple of those, or most of them, but there's one that's really undermining everything else. So it's an opportunity for a little bit more self-awareness around that. So then once you know that that's an issue, then you can seek out solutions to that. We follow up on that as well. So we'll offer a call, just a sort of a discovery call at the end of that. And then there's resources. There's the podcast, which people are obviously listening to now. There's a blog. And then you can look at interacting with us through our programs as well and workshops.
Okay. So do you have on your website different workshops which are planned, like different times and dates? Yeah.
So often there's a calendar with those. So that's about to be updated again. We ran one only a few weeks ago. So there is that opportunity. So, or if you want to bring us into your organisation, then by all means, get in contact, and we're happy to sort of have those discussions with management and leadership.
And is it one-on-one?
It's more of a small group scenario, but again, it depends on that audit. Like there might be an opportunity where we need to work with someone in the leadership team one-on-one. We're not psychologists, we're not counsellors, so we're not going in to solve deep emotional trauma. But often a lot of what we do helps people resolve that for themselves because of the skills that perhaps weren't there in the first place that we're helping them sort of develop themselves.
Earlier in this podcast, I said, because it's a podcast, you can stop it and go back. Well, that was another, you can stop it and go back conversation. I think it's fairly difficult for companies to change their culture. It's not that hard for me to change my culture. So if I work out the things which are hurting me, there are answers to that outside of going to HR and hoping someone else will fix it, because they almost never do, and you haven't. And it's not about right and wrong, bad and good. It's just about, is it working or isn't it working? And you come along and see these guys, and they'll help you see yourself differently, I think probably would be the way of seeing it, and maybe even give you that extra bit of courage to say, I'll give it a go, because there's every chance that all of your mates are saying it's impossible, it's always been like this. So people are just pushing you down. And it's a difficult moment in our lives when we say, well, hang on a second, I don't want to be down. And often we've surrounded ourselves with people who make it comfortable to be down, and they listen to our complaints, and then we go home, and you know, if we're at work, and we walk into the home and we bring all that with us. It's like a mist, you know, and little things are wrong and they become, you know, huge problems, and your partner's, you know, 8 minutes late, or you know, or someone's stupid enough to say we're having peas again this evening. You know, I mean, we're not on the right ball because we've been worn down.
Can I offer a tool for that?
Yes.
So, because it's a great point, and you know, whenever we leave a situation, we enter another one. We talked about the energy we bring to that in terms of net gain or loss. One thing, really simple thing, is that thing about emotionally grounding yourself.
Yep.
So it's a deep belly breath, and it's looking inward and going, where do I feel this energy?
Yeah.
Put your hand on it. I release what is not mine to hold on to, and that's it.
Say it again.
I release what is not mine to hold on to, and that's it. Before you walk in the door, it makes a profound difference on what you bring to that next environment you enter into, particularly if that's coming home to your family. So that's been a good tool that I've used in the past. Another one, so often the physical kind of act can help us deal with some of that emotional energy that we're carrying. Because the other one I found very effective is, for me, I tend to hold stress here. Some people hold in the shoulders, you know, some people in the neck, you know, wherever. But once you have that perspective or that habit of going, okay, where do I feel it? You know, and then for me, if it feels like I'm holding someone else's energy, because it feels here for me, okay, I'm just going to sever that connection now. Because it's about sort of protecting my energy. So I've had that interaction. I've maybe, you know, offered something in it, or they've taken something from it. But at that point, it's now helpful for us both to sever that, so we can each sort of carry on with the rest of our day. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, this stuff is just so important, you know, and you can listen to our conversation today. I guess the fear is the conversation stops and you look down and you've got 5 phone calls you've missed, and the lawns need to be cut, and you know, you haven't been to the shops yet, and you sort of just lose it. You know, that's probably what's going to happen to most people. Happens to me. I mean, I wouldn't be still watching this probably because my attention span's not that good. Although the information that Daniel's been sharing has been really, really helpful. A lot of people will see. I've just lost the word. The Americans came out with all this stuff you're supposed to say. There's a word for it when you give yourself. It starts with I can see it here, so it hasn't come around yet. But when you recite things, but you see it, and as you said, and you recite it. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, that's just American junk. Well, it actually isn't. What it is, it's me deciding I will change. I haven't found the way to change, and this guy's just given me a few words I can say. How could that not be helpful to give it a go? You know, and the very first time you say those words, can you just tell me the words again?
Which ones? The ones about severing?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, if there's an energy and you identify where that energy is, so it's a deep breath in to notice where it is.
Yes.
A hand over that place where you're feeling it.
Yes.
And I release what is not mine to hold on to.
So when you say those words, I release what's not mine to hold on to, you've actually taken authority on yourself. So at that very stage, you could do quite a few other things. And every time you say those words, you're reminding yourself, no, I can do this. I don't have to be the person I was yesterday. I better be a lot of it, because a lot of it's, you know, great, but a lot of it, some of it wasn't working. And just by saying that, not incantation, there's another word, which starts with I, it reminds me, I have the authority. I don't have to just be whatever I was yesterday. And so once I've used that, what am I going to do with it? If I'm talking to people about handling aggressive situations, or even distressing situations, I say to them, keep an eye out for yourself for when you go, because at that stage you would have found something to give you that peace. And you put your hand on your chest and you say, you know, it won't be on your stomach. I can't see your stomach because it's disappeared behind your shirt. Mine's more available for you to look at. But seriously, when you touch yourself and when you say something, you know you got to the point where you're starting to take responsibility.
Yeah, and it's just checking in with yourself,
Yeah.
like giving yourself that moment of
Yeah.
kind of peace, like
Yeah.
to be able to ground and go again, like
Yeah.
but go again in a way where you feel a sense of calmness and excitement for what's to
Yeah.
come, rather than that fear and tension that you've been holding on to.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's all right. Pleasure.
I went away when we first started this. We had a little break just because I got tired. You see, we had a little break, and the conversation has been on my mind ever since
Great.
we had that conversation, and I've changed some of the sort of parameters of some of my thinking a little bit. I've reinvestigated them. So, thank you for your energy.
Pleasure, and thank you for the challenge. I welcome it. Sometimes we do get caught in our patterns, or we sort of repeat something in a way that we've heard it rather than the way that we intended it to. So, this is the benefit of collaboration.
That's right, and the book. What the guys have said, and they've started to read it, is that they'd like to support what we're doing here, and so it's $30 at the bookshop or online, but they're going to let me give it to you for half price. So if you want to take advantage of that, just send them through an email, and they'll connect me through to you, and you'll see their email address. I think going along the bottom of the video.
Yeah, we'll pop it up on the screen now, but it's info@theadaptabilitymovement.world.
info@theadaptabilitymovement.world.
And obviously they can find you at
leadershipthinking.academy.
Yep, beautiful,
Yeah.
terrific.
And we all interact differently, and there's different needs from day to day. Just make sure who you're talking to is authentic, and they're more interested about you than anything else. So, we're here for you, and that's what it's about.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rex.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Now, I noticed the little red light going off last time.